I started noticing, especially when I was in a crowd of people, that it was harder and harder for me to understand everything that was going on. I could hear people talking, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. At home, there was quite a problem. Nobody wanted to watch TV with me because I would have the sound way up. People got very tired of repeating all the time what they had said before, and after a while they got tired of yelling at me all the time.
Fred Ferguson is one of 10 million Americans who have suffered irreversible hearing loss.
Well, I started working around noisy places when I was 21. I worked in a scrap metal yard around hydraulic shears, cranes, large forklifts, and from there I started working for ODOT, driving trucks, working with grinders, rollers, graders, all types of asphalt and pavement machinery, and I've done that now for about 30 years.
Over 30 million workers in America are exposed to hazardously high sound levels on a regular basis. Construction sites, with backup alarms, highway traffic, and especially construction machinery, generate noise levels as high as 130 decibels. Any sound over 85 decibels can harm your hearing. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration stresses that habitual exposure to noise averaging 85 decibels or more over an 8-hour day causes gradual hearing loss in most people. Louder noises accelerate this damage.
As we age, most of us lose some hair cells and some nerve cells, so most of us develop some sensory neural hearing loss as we get older. Noise exposure is one of the leading causes of sensory neural hearing loss because extreme noise exposure can permanently damage and destroy the hair cells and the nerve cells attached to them.
The hair cells in your inner ear are tiny and very fragile. Sound waves wash over them like wind blowing over a field of tall grass. Loud noises are like footsteps trampling that grass. Done once or twice, the grass will pop back up. Done repeatedly, the grass flattens and dies. When the hair cells in your inner ear flatten permanently, you lose some hearing. Permanently. Like the grass, some of your hearing dies. Not all hearing loss leaves you in silence. Continuous noise exposure can also lead to tinnitus, a persistent ringing, roaring, clicking, or hissing sound in your ears. 12 million Americans have tinnitus. Many find it difficult to hear, work, or even sleep. Exposure to harmful noise can cause damage to the sensitive hair cells of the inner ear by two methods: an intense brief impulse, such as an explosion or gunshot, or continuous exposure to noise, such as operating a backhoe or pavement grinder daily for many weeks. So, what is too loud? What sound levels cause your inner ear hair cells to flatten to the point that they don't recover? 115 decibels of continuous noise from a jackhammer over a shift without hearing protection will do it. Using a power-actuated nail gun with an impulse or explosion of noise at 120 decibels will do it. So will firing a shotgun with an intense explosive noise of 140 decibels. One exposure to sounds like these takes away some of your hearing. Not a lot, but some. And over time, these little bits can add up to a substantial hearing loss.
People don't always notice their own hearing loss because often it progresses gradually. So they don't really know what they're missing, and they make accommodations. People learn to read faces and lips. We ask the patient, do you have trouble with your hearing? And they'll say, no, I've learned to adjust. I'm doing okay, but it's good when they bring a spouse or one of their children or a friend, and then you can ask that other person, are they having any trouble with their hearing? And everyone else nods their heads like, oh yeah, they're having a lot of trouble. They can't understand what we're saying. They can't understand television. So sometimes you don't get the whole story from the patient, but you get it from the people close to the patient.
So how much noise are you exposed to? Probably a lot more than you know. Here are some typical decibel readings for noisemakers at work. Remember, every 6 decibel increase equals a doubling in the sound pressure. When working around this equipment, you need hearing protection. Noise exposure is not limited to your work environment. These are typical decibel readings for the home.
Noise exposure depends on the loudness of the sound and also the time that you're exposed to it. The louder the sound is, the less time it takes for it to cause permanent damage. Most people will develop some high-frequency hearing loss, and that's because of the construction of the cochlea, the inner ear. Sound waves coming in that are extremely loud will hit the high-frequency areas of the cochlea first and cause damage. So most people will develop some high-frequency hearing loss.
So, how is your hearing? Do you ask people to repeat themselves? Do you play the radio or television too loud for your family? Do you feel that you miss some conversation? Do you get tired guessing what people are saying? More importantly, do you work in a noisy environment? To know for certain and to quantify your hearing level, you should take a simple hearing test. In fact, if you work around loud equipment and are exposed to average daily noise levels equaling or exceeding 85 decibels, you are required to have an annual hearing test. The first test establishes a baseline in your hearing. Subsequent tests reveal if your hearing is changing. Although your employer may be required to provide screening tests, these should be viewed as the first step in identifying the type of hearing loss you may have and its severity. Screening tests provided by your employer usually are given in a trailer or on-the-job site. If they show you have a permanent loss or change, and you feel your loss is affecting your ability to hear well, get further evaluation.
Eardrum.
Otolaryngologists and audiologists help diagnose and measure hearing loss and identify the causes of hearing loss. They perform different tests to assess the type and degree of loss. An audiologist can give you a detailed air conduction test, similar to the hearing test provided by your employer, as well as a bone conduction test, needed to determine if your hearing loss is caused by noise exposure.
And it's going to stimulate the inner ear directly.
More importantly, the audiologist can determine if your hearing loss affects your ability to hear the spoken word in noisy environments. Noise-induced hearing loss is entirely preventable. Regardless of hearing ability, everyone should work to prevent any future loss. First, identify noise hazard equipment. Identified noise hazards, that is, any equipment exceeding 90 decibels, should be labeled so workers will know to use hearing protection when operating them. If you don't know the noise levels for the equipment you use, ask your safety representative to get a sound level meter and measure the equipment. Put distance between you and the noise source. Walk away, if possible, or move the noise source away from people and reflective surfaces. Doubling your distance from the noise source can reduce your noise exposure by 50%. Keep the exposure time to a minimum. Plan noisy activities when fewer people are on the site, and take breaks from the noise hazard area. If you had a noisy day at work, give your ears a quiet break at home that night. If possible, modify the noise source so it is quieter. Be sure equipment is properly maintained. Retrofit old equipment. Don't forget when you purchase new equipment to buy quiet. And always, always use hearing protection when around loud noises. This applies especially if you have a hearing impairment. Many types of hearing protection are available. Earplugs come in two varieties, pre-formed and hand-formed. Every earplug comes with a noise reduction rating, an indicator of how much noise the plug stops when tested in a laboratory. A good rule of thumb is to expect the earplug or earmuff to stop about half of what is listed on the package. So, if you're working around a loader generating 93 decibels and the earplugs have a noise reduction rating of 26 decibels, they will bring the noise entering your ear down to a more acceptable 80 decibels. Keep in mind your goal with hearing protection, to reduce exposure to below 85 decibels. Canal caps are a good option when you're around intermittent loud noises. They can be inserted and removed quickly, and they hang around your neck when not in use. Muffs provide the best hearing protection. They offer a universal fit and can be worn with earplugs or with hearing aids. Speaking of hearing aids, they are not hearing protection. Your two options are to remove your hearing aid and use protection, or turn off your hearing aid and wear earmuffs over them. Hearing aids do not block out enough sound to protect your hearing. You still need protection to keep your hearing from getting worse. Many people with a hearing loss complain when wearing noise protection. They can't hear what they need to on the construction site. And yes, it is important to hear backup alarms, equipment noises, traffic, and your coworkers. Most hearing protection sold today blocks out the same sound frequencies as the human voice. That can be a problem. So several manufacturers are now marketing flat attenuating earplugs and earmuffs. What if you've suffered some hearing loss? The first thing you need to do is acknowledge that you might have a problem. Waiting will not make it go away.
Well, nobody wants hearing aids. Like I tell patients sometimes, Christmas is coming, and nobody says, oh boy, hearing aids, just what I always wanted. Nobody really wants them. However, they help so many patients.
The bottom line is, they can make a tremendous difference.
When I first got my hearing aids in, I remember being in the office there with the person fitting me for them, and I was, wow, I can really tell what he's saying to me. And I got up and I left his office and I walked out in the hall and I go, wow, I can hear my footsteps. I hadn't realized that I hadn't heard myself walk, just the sound of my feet hitting the floor. There was a fountain about 40 feet away, and I could hear the water gurgling as it came down over the rocks. I went out and I got in my pickup, started it up, and I went, wow, turn the noise down because the radio was up so loud.
To understand what is being said, people with good hearing generally need spoken words on a radio or CB to be 2 to 5 decibels louder than the background noise. People with hearing loss normally require at least 10 decibels higher than background noise. Remember, small increases in decibels make a big difference. A 10 decibel change increases sound pressure exposure by 90%. If you are having trouble hearing communication radios, CBs, or backup alarms on sites, tell your safety representative. Communication equipment is available to help you hear what you need to and still protect your hearing on dangerous sites. The bottom line is this: protecting your hearing is your responsibility. If your job puts you in loud environments, know the noise hazards. Put distance between you and the noise source if possible. Limit your exposure. Modify the noise source, and use hearing protection regardless of your level of hearing ability.
The sound is the first communication that you have in life. It's the first way you have of giving your thoughts to another person. Your hearing is your responsibility. Your hearing is really, really important. And once you lose it, you probably aren't going to get it back.